fáilte go dtí an episód sa Ceis na Talan. Podcrail faoin Nghaelan agus a star de aine atá fistrup faoi our gadrúh léithí agus a role in our bhénúlacht. Welcome to The Language Question, a podcast about the Irish language and its history for anyone curious about our relationship with it and its role in our identity. Maris Gnog, bí cinnte a chlárú ag thelanguagequestion.com/resources chun de acmhainní fálam to Sarah Nashka all agus a bheith ar an eolas faoi gachród atá ar siúl ar an show. As usual, please be sure to sign up at thelanguagequestion.com/resources to be sure to get your complimentary, valuable learning resources and to stay up to date, upcoming episodes, guests, and to receive exclusive content. Peish Gale, Shulling, Gumwena Tu Sultas. Anyhow, here goes. I hope you enjoy it. Laura Pakenham is a TikTok creator and online educator, promoting the learning of Gaeilge to her followers through tips and Irish language videos. She has worked as presenter on TG Cahir, Ireland's first Irish language TV station, which reaches an average of 1.2 million people in the Republic of Ireland weekly. Laura anchored Nuacht Cúla Cahir, a daily news programme for young people, and you can follow her at Laura J. Pakenham, and that's Laura J. Pakenham. Laura, a fara, tá fáilte is fihiród ar an show agus tá Harbheith buig diet as a bhelin.
Well, gur míle maithe tá a héin Harbheith buach gohfuil man seach a chuil tú.
Tom Gadil ar fád cara. I'm not on the social media kind of circuit to see where you are in your domain, let's say, on a regular basis, Laura. But I have seen a book that we're going to come to now in a moment, because I should have mentioned, of course, that Laura is also the author of Irish History and Culture Through Language, which is one of the primary things we want to talk about today on the show. But before we get to that, Laura, what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, as we do with all guests here on the show at the beginning, is just to go back to the beginning for you and just to talk about what, the language was like for you growing up and your kind of, if you like, journey with the Irish language. What did that look like?
I suppose in the past, I've called myself a bit of an anomaly, that I haven't necessarily had the upbringing that people expect Irish speakers to have. But I guess that's my whole mission statement, is that, my journey with the language is testament to the fact that there's no one size fits all approach. There's no one specific background you have to become an Irish speaker. So I'm from County Longford, born and raised, went to English medium primary and secondary schools. My parents don't have Irish. You see a lot of people in the Irish speaking world and maybe their parents are Irish speakers or their grandparents were Irish teachers, and, this kind of sentiment of it being passed down and passed down and passed down. Nothing was passed down to me. The only thing that was passed down to me in terms of Irish is that my parents didn't hate it. They didn't have a negative outlook on it. So I never had to combat that challenge at home. So I was able to kind of explore Irish freely and positively in school and at home. And I think I'm just, a language brain person. English was by far my favourite subject in school. I loved writing and reading and spelling and grammar and, all the likes. So then that same interest transferred over to Irish because it was the same things we were doing, spelling and reading and writing stories and filling in the blanks and this, that and the other. So I just liked Irish as a subject. It genuinely didn't go any deeper than that when I was in school, because I had no context of, the broader, Irish language landscape in Ireland. And then as a teenager, I went to the Gaeltacht during the summer, but again, that was just for a bit of fun. It was just kind of like summer camp to me. I didn't realise, or fully grasp what the Gaeltacht was. And I had a moment where it kind of hit me. I was staying in a Banantee's house, and they had a little 2 or 3 year old son. And this little boy was, just speaking Irish with us in the house. And the few little words he had, it was Irish they were in. And I was like, wait, so there's people out there who have Irish, but he hasn't even been to school yet. So how does that make sense? Because in my head, Irish only existed in school. So that kind of got the cogs turning. And then, to make quite a long story short, wanted to do primary teaching in college. Just so happened that the year I was doing my Leaving Cert 2019, Marino were launching a new course, primary teaching through Irish. Went to the open day, heard about it, completely misunderstood what the course actually was. I thought it was like a major and a minor, primary teaching, but you specialise in Irish. No. It was the full shebang, full whack, just every single word of your, Bachelor of Education, but just in Irish. Bachelor's in Stevie on the Gaeilge. So that was quite a land when I started. I wasn't the only one in my course in my boat.
How proficient were you?
Leaving Cert Irish. I had exam Irish. Now I could, I think again, just because of, I guess, me being a language brain person. And also I think I'm musical as well. And I think the two things coincide. I think my spoken Irish was good because I'm quite a good communicator. I understood and could hear and mimic the musicality of the language and how the language is supposed to sound. But really my best work in Irish at the time would have been on paper. I could write a banging essay for the Leaving Cert, but that doesn't translate to, actual spoken Irish. And that's what really, shocked me when I went into my course and I struggled to communicate with my housemates who were all Irish speakers, and the dynamic in our apartment then nearly had to shift to English because of me, because I just didn't have that exposure to the language yet. A lot of people in my course were either from the Gaeltacht, they had went to Gael schools themselves, or, Irish was, quite a language of the home. I had none of that. I literally had none of that. So I felt a bit like an alien. I felt a bit out of place. And then also I was like, God, like this thing, like this, it's not just that I'm a person who speaks Irish. It's the persona of an Irish speaker. And that's impacted by your background, your growing up, your community, your link to other aspects of Irish culture, like, the music and everything. And I played trad and everything, but I just didn't feel like an Irish speaker. I didn't feel like I was that person. I was just a person who spoke Irish, and suddenly found myself in this course. And it was tough, to be honest. I did consider for a long time changing over to the English version of my course, but then COVID came around. And I think COVID was genuinely my saving grace, because college moved online. So there wasn't as much pressure. A lot of our exams were open book. So it took a lot of pressure off me, and I kind of got to naturally, because I was exposed to the language every day, so naturally it was going to get better. But it kind of was then on my own terms and at my own pace. And that process happened gradually then over, the guts of the 2 years where we were kind of in online college. And yeah, then I went back in fourth year. We had to do our final teaching placement in the Gaeltacht. So I shipped off to Lettermore, and yeah.
And sorry, what duration was the course?
4 years. 4 years. So I had done.
So you had this wasn't like just a 1 year kind of
no,
teacher
this
training
is my
course.
undergrad.
Yeah,
this is my undergrad degree. I had done the majority of first year up until March before COVID hit, and then we had the guts of 2 years, give or take, all of second year, and I think a chunk of third year as well, potentially. And then fourth year we went to Lettermore. Well, I went to Lettermore for my final teaching placement, and that was when I was like, okay, this is what it's all about. I lived with a family who had essentially no contact with the English language. And just that they could live such a fulfilled, fruitful, beautiful, passionate life only in Irish. And I was like, okay, this is what it's all about. I want to be able to speak Irish with as much fun as they do, with as much kind of, liveliness, because up until that, Irish was very much like a tanga Imanach for me, and a language of operation nearly. It was, for study and for college and for work and that kind of things. But I didn't see it as this living, exciting, fun language that you could actually like sink your teeth into. And that's the exposure I got there. And yeah, I kind of haven't looked back since.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so interesting. I mean, there's so much going on there, because I can really relate to that thing you're talking about there. We're coming into this kind of, Irish language speaking community, albeit people who are coming from different Irish language backgrounds, coming to the college environment, and you're feeling this kind of, because this is a really weird thing for Irish people, I think. Because there's so much going on in relation to the Irish language that we can find, there's a big kind of imposter syndrome kind of feeling, am I really kind of, if you like, in this in-group that I can suddenly just start showing up and being, an Irish speaker here with people who are coming from the Gaeltacht or from, who spoke the language all of their lives growing up at home. So there's a lot of kind of, and who's this person? Who do they think they are? Type of thing kind of going on. It's on top of the actual, the job of, let's say, learning and becoming proficient in the language itself.
Yeah, I'd see it's funny because I think that feeling of, oh, I don't belong here, who do I think I am? That was never really imposed on anyone else to me. This was an internal insecurity that I had, and probably, to be honest, will always have a little bit. And I guess that's mainly why I started posting on social media and stuff like that, just to show that like, okay, there's no one size fits all approach to this here. I kind of came out of nowhere. But here I am, you know, mingling with the best of them, and a lot of the times going unscathed or undetected as like a non-native speaker. But I don't know, I think from what I know, I can never speak on native speakers' behalf because I cannot level with their experience at all. But I've spent a lot of time with them and I've listened to them a lot. I don't know if this nearly pedestal that they're put on it's not helpful for the future of the language. But I don't even know if they want that. You know, they're just like, and I see this, I've seen, I guess, a kind of a mindset echoed from them that it's like, well, you know, Irish is just normal for us. Like, it's not something that's commercialized. For me, learning Irish was such a big thing. And, you know, in media and in the arts, you know, it can be such a big thing. And it's, wow, we're learning Irish and all the articles, look at the revolution of Irish and it's coming back and Irish is having its moment. And they're just kind of like, which like, we know no different. You know, like that family I lived with in Nethermore, they're not spending their days thinking, wow, look at the, you know, the Irish language movement. They're like, this is just what we do. Like, it's the norm. It'd be like if
we're the true Gaels here. Like, this is what's going
like,
on.
It'd be the same if like people were starting to be like, wow, you're an English speaker. That's amazing. And it's like, they're like,
so cool.
well, like if someone said that to me, I'm like, well, it's just, I know no different. Do you know? And that insecurity was never passed on to me by anyone else. I had one negative experience where I was kind of made to feel, you know, the fact that I was maybe an odd one out was made apparent to me. We were doing a course, and I won't give too much details because this world is so small, but basically we were telling people what schools we had went to, and it was in college, so a lot of people were saying, you know, I went to this Gaeltacht, I went to this Gaeltacht school XYZ, and this person would have known all the schools, and then I said the name of the school I went to in Longford, and it was kind of, oh, but that's not a Gaeltacht. And I was like, oh yeah, I know. And they were like, well, where did you get your Irish then? Which, if you flip the narrative, I can take that as a compliment. Because it's like, yeah, I didn't go to Gaeltacht, but look at me now. But it's just, and then another big thing for me is my name. I get a lot of comments about my name on TikTok. And, you know, people saying, God, Pakenham, why would I want to learn Irish from someone whose ancestors are directly responsible for eradicating it? I'm like, okay, I didn't do none. I didn't do nothing here. Leave me out of it. Like, I'm trying to fix it. Okay, I'm not saying I'm responsible for anything, but I'm trying to fix anything that went wrong. Like, a name is just a name. That has nothing to do with it. But that's another thing I considered. Like, I actually considered, kind of when I started working in media, having a bit of a screen name, I suppose, or like a stage name. I was going to take my mother's maiden name. She's Woods, because there's an Irish equivalent to Woods, and I would have been Laura Pakenham, as opposed to Laura Pakenham. Because I don't know, again, this is an internal thing, but I just feel like sometimes I stick out like a sore thumb. And I think immediately, okay, I tell someone my name, I tell them where I'm from, they're immediately thinking, sure, Jesus, you weren't raised with Irish at all. And then I'm thinking, God, I'm like, I'm losing, I'm, you know, blowing my cover here. You know, every little piece of information I tell, I'm blowing my cover. But I don't have to try and let on as if I'm a native speaker that I was raised with it, you know? And 90% of the time when I tell people my name, where I'm from, they're like, that's us. But it's just, it's a personal thing. But I think it's because speaking and learning a language is so intimate, especially when there's such kind of social constructs going with it in Ireland as well.
But this is precisely it. Because like, if you were being dropped into, you know, downtown Osaka and learning Japanese, you wouldn't have any hits, right? It'd just be, right, okay, I don't speak this thing, so I got to figure it out, right? But because it's Irish, and you mentioned all these different layers and layers and layers of kind of social kind of wacky stuff we've gone on in our heads about surnames, and, you know, and then other names, and even translating, because some of the translations into Irish are so kind of artificial. When they were doing the resurgence of the language back in the early 20th century, they went to some great trouble to translate all English names into Irish surnames.
Pakenham doesn't work in Irish, and I just had to accept it.
Yeah, but even then, like, it's all so kind of, it's also multi-layered. And that's actually, we're going to come to your book, and I want to get into that, but before we get to that, I think that this background is absolutely vital and fascinating. But you mentioned it in the book as well, from the other side, from the flip side of that, from the Gaeltacht, you know, denizen point of view. They're just saying, this is just the kind of language that I speak to my family in. And also they themselves feel a certain kind of maybe inadequacy in relation to the language, in relation to maybe, let's say, their grammar. They haven't maybe studied the language formally in the same way that maybe others have. And I don't know. I remember were you speaking about somebody who was trying to be asked to give an interview, and they didn't feel that they were, capable of doing the interview because their Irish kind of wouldn't have been official enough or formal enough or whatever the case
Yeah,
may
see,
be.
this is the thing. There's so many different functions of the language. As I said, you have an Gaeilge mar cheanga aimineach. Irish is Feimineach is kind of like to operate, I suppose, like an operational language, a formal, official language.
Functional, I suppose,
yeah. That it's for work or it's for, studies, and it's official and it's formal. And I would feel comfortable in that realm because, I got my third level education through Irish, and, in work settings, I've had to write, official documents and, spell check and use Irish in that formal sense. But then I feel out of my depth in social settings where, I could be at a Cayley or I could be, out in the Gaeltacht, and the way in which the language is functioning there is at it's vernacular that I'm so not familiar with. So I feel, I struggle there. And, in other senses, again, not to, speak from a native person's perspective. This is just what I've seen and Like experienced myself. But, a native woman that I spent a lot of time with, when I was with her, she would ask me to make some of her phone calls, to like the hospital or to book an eyebrow appointment or whatever it may be, because she didn't feel comfortable with English in those scenarios. Her English would be more formal and that tang aimenach because she learned it in school. She learned English, the same way we learned Irish in school. So that's where you see the mass, population of adults in Ireland here, where they're saying, I learned my Anwal Cadagum Dulgadi on Shuppa, when they have their Cúpla Focal. When they say they have a Cúpla Focal, they're really saying they have Cúpla Focal Scriafa. If I'm taking my mum and my dad as an example, they can, oh my God, my mother could write an essay in Irish. There's so much Irish in her head, but she hasn't practiced that skill of actually speaking it. So, that lady in the Gaeltacht, her English was the same. She could maybe read a letter in English, but would she feel as comfortable speaking it on the phone to someone? Maybe not. And it's just, there's so many different functions of the language, and we all have weaknesses and we all have greatnesses and strengths with it. It's hard to be an all-rounder. And yeah, I suppose it's just a matter of once it fulfills the purpose you need it for in your life, if Irish is a simple social language for you that you'll maybe spit a few words out of in the pub with your friends, if that's the role it needs to fulfill in your life and you have enough to do that, great. But I think, again, no more than anything, we're tough on ourselves and we feel like we need to be the best at everything.
Oh, but I think we have a special place as Irish people for Irish in terms of being tough on ourselves. You know what I mean? Because we need to give there's such head trash associated with it on so many levels. I could talk with this all day long. All right, but I've got to stick to the topic here to a certain extent. And I went, but because you were giving us a fascinating run through there, because I'd love to just follow the kind of arc of your progression with the language, if that's okay, because I think it's so you were talking about it. You finished the fourth year in the of your degree and then went to Lettermore, and just take it forward from there. How did your kind of living in the language evolve from there?
To be honest, I spent my 3 months in Connemara and I didn't want to leave. I loved it, and I loved the role the language was playing in my life. And I kind of just felt like, as corny as it is, a new little part of me was unlocked. A part of me that didn't know she could function in that way or function with that language and have so much fun with that language. And I loved it. And I didn't want that to end. And to be honest, another factor, I knew I maybe didn't want to go straight into teaching. I was very young when I finished my undergrad. I was 21 when I had my 4 years done. So I knew there was no crazy panic on me, to jump into the working world. And this is what I always said. I knew I had other interests, but I was like, okay, I'll get something that I can fall back on in the bag in case this doesn't work out. And media would have always have been that dream. But again, like growing up, I feel like you only know how to get into jobs that other people who do them. Like when I was growing up, I was like, okay, I can be a teacher, like a doctor or a farmer or a nurse, TV presenter, radio presenter, social media star. Wasn't a thing back then, but you know what I mean? I had no idea how to get into that. And yeah, so it's funny. It was kind of an accumulation of things. While I was on teaching placement, the class that I had were taking part in a show for Cúla Cahir called Anfa, which was done by the production company Phoebe Media. All important aspects here. It was kind of like the Den or something. You bring the kids and they go and they film the show for the day. And it was a long day. It was my first time, not very first, but first time kind of being face to face with a proper TV scene or TV set and seeing all the workers, the producers running around, the presenter. But I remember looking up at the set and looking up at the lights and all the cameras and everything and everyone wearing their headsets. I was like, this is so cool. Whereas the other teachers were like, Jesus, I couldn't do this if you paid me. That poor presenter up there, like he has a long day. Whereas I was like, I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to be part of this world. So fleeting thought, nothing more happened. Anyway, then a couple of weeks later, I was actually towards the end of my placement when I was in Galway City. My parents were coming up to see me, and that same presenter who was presenting that show, he was out doing a news report for Nuacht TG Cahir. And I said, God, there he is again. Again, looking at him, I want to be doing this. And I said, Laura, you just need to bite the bullet here and go up and ask him. Because at that point I was thinking, I'm probably going to have to do a master's to get into media. I've no qualification in media. You can't just get a job in something if you've no qualification, as far as I was concerned. I asked him and I said, hey, I was actually out with class when you were filming Anfa, so random, would love to get into media. Just wondering how you did it, what course? And he's like, oh no, I didn't do media. Like I just did the internship program with TG Cahir. You should look into it. And I was like, okay. Now the applications for these internships are open for maybe max 3-4 weeks in the year. And it just so happened that I had met him during that time frame, which again, crazy. I feel like there's a lot of fate at play here. And that year was the first year they were offering a position as social media intern for educational content. So they wanted an education social media person. And I was like, well, I just got a degree in education, love social media. Let me apply. Applied, was, oh God, I actually forgot about this. Ended up on a dating show in between then. Grar and Traw, just again, seen an ad on Instagram, applied. I was like, look, it's a way to get onto telly. So had done a dating show in the meantime in Irish, which was so fun. Again, I just wanted to see a TV set. I was like, I don't care if I'm a contestant or if I'm like working on it. I just want to be there and see it. And then came out of that, had gotten my interview with TG Cahir. Just so happened it was the day before I flew to Boston for my J1. Because I thought, not a chance I'm going to get this. If the interview had come up after I had gone to Boston, I probably wouldn't have bothered trying to rearrange because I would have been like, oh, there was no chance anyway. Long story short again, got the job, found out a week into Boston, literally cried my eyes out. I was like, what do you mean I'm going to work for TG Cahir? I think it just healed so much of the imposter syndrome I had. And I was like, wait, no, because I was like, I thought TG Cahir was like, oh, surely they'll only hire people who they know and who've done this their whole lives.
Seventh generation Gael goers.
Exactly. I was like, I haven't got a chance. It's like Pakenham one from Longford. They definitely don't want me.
Yeah.
But I did.
Yeah.
And so then I came home from Boston relatively early to come home, buy a car, move down to Galway and start working. And I had the best year of my life on my internship. Like it was just, I was so fulfilled. It was education and media coming together and social media. And it was at that time that
And that was based in the TG Cahir studios there in
Yes, we were out in
Carrara,
the headquarters. And it was at the same time I decided to start posting myself on social media. Because my role in TG Cahir wasn't necessarily camera facing. But I was like, okay, presenting would be a dream. I think it's something I really want to do because I want to share my story, but also, it could be a good business move and like in terms of career progression and whatnot. So I started posting content myself. That went crazy. It's still going crazy. The book is as a result of my social media videos. And I've gone on to do the Divil and all since, present Nuacht TG Cahir for a year, which was, if you remember, the production company, Phoebe Media, who were doing the show that I had gone to with my kids when I was on placement, my students. So full circle moment. And the head producer of that show, Anfa, that I was at with my class, is now my absolute best friend in the whole world because she was my boss for Nuacht TG Cahir and we're just like this now. So it's all very full circle. And yeah, that leaves me here now. I wrote the book and I've gone back to college. I'm doing my master's at the minute. Just wrapped up first year of that. So second year is pending. And yeah, I've taken a year to...
What do you do the master's in?
It's a Cheslan Gaeilge agus Gaeltachta. So Irish medium and Gaeltacht education. Love. So yeah, that's where I'm at now.
Wonderful. And where is that?
It's Coalition, it's it.
Ah,
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. And tell me, so what does a language look like in your life now on a daily basis?
I suppose I'm working freelance for the most part at the minute. So it's a combination of different jobs and stuff. So it isn't always necessarily my language of work. I've dipped, the toe into kind of some English media and stuff as well. And funny enough, I really, really missed my Irish and do miss it when it's not part of my work. While I've been freelance, I've gotten the opportunity to go back and do some subbing, which has been beautiful. So again, if I'm not in a Gael school or a Gaeltacht school, I miss my Irish. And I think that's a valuable lesson I've learned that I'll be able to carry with me for the rest of my life, to know that I just need my Irish to feel fulfilled. And yeah, but other than that, like I was full time for 2 years out west. So Irish was my language in work. It's my social language because it's how, through work and through the Irish language scene and the community, it's how I've met the majority of my friends. So I'm out Friday nights, Saturday nights with my friends, speaking Irish all night. You know, to the point where people turn around and be like, "Are you speaking Irish?" And we're like, "Well, yeah." And yeah, my parents have such a beautiful view on it now because they have to have an understanding of the language to kind of keep up with my life. Do you know, and that's a realization Mom said. She was like, "Look, we have to be able to keep up with this with you and we have to go on this journey with you. You know, if you're on a show, we want to be able to watch it and understand it." And same with my boyfriend. He's just the best. He's like, no, it's so funny because I'm always out and about with him. And anyone I meet, like from work or just generally in Galway that I meet on the street, it's Irish I'm speaking with them for the most part, because if two of us know we're both Irish speakers, we're going to speak Irish to each other. And I feel so bad for him because so oftentimes I feel like he's just stood there like a spare part. But then it's happened so many times where like he'll not butt in, but like respond in the middle of the conversation that's happening all in Irish, and like very proficient Irish at that. It could be with native speakers from depths of Connemara. And he's responding and he's like answering questions. And then it's only afterwards I kind of look at him and I'm like, we had that whole conversation in Irish. And he's like, yeah, no, I understood everything. I just can't process what I want to say in time to reply in Irish. He said, but I can reply in English. I know what you're saying. And it just makes me so proud of him. And it's nice to be able to understand his perspective and by proxy, probably the perspective of so many people around the country on the language.
Yeah, that is so cool. Just as you mentioned, just in terms of family, because I know just in terms of the dedication in the book is you dedicated to the Grahar Robert, because you said that it wasn't a language of the household. Was it something? Is it something? Does your brother speak French?
My brother's a polyglot, so whatever happened when my mother and father came together, they produced language brains. I don't know how it happened because my dad's an engineer / army and my mom worked in hospitality her whole life. So I don't know where it came from. But yeah, he's a polyglot. So it's funny. We kind of have opposite experiences with Spanish and Irish. He pursued Spanish in college. He had done it in secondary school, loved it. So he did Spanish mainly as his main language, and then German and Japanese also in college. So then Irish kind of fell by the wayside at that point. Whereas with me, loved Spanish in secondary school, got to a really, really good level of proficiency that I still have now. But I pursued Irish then, so Spanish kind of fell by the wayside a little bit. So in order to try and keep our languages up together, I will speak a lot of Irish with him, vice versa. He'll speak Spanish with me, vice versa. And yeah, we're just two absolute language nerds and linguistics nerds. I learned so much from him. He learned so much from me. And like, honestly, if people were to listen in on the conversations we have, we'd get so excited about like a comma, you know, and we'd be like, oh my God, like it's ridiculous. But I love
what they're doing with the mofojito here is just so cool.
You guys don't even know what's going on. But yeah, he's just an incredible brain. And I'll happily admit, you know, I had to refer to him for a lot of the historical stuff in the book. As much as I try to learn as much as I can about Irish history as to understand the Irish language, I'm not a historian. And I had to check a lot with him. The Irish history section at the front, he proofread it and he was like, we're missing a couple hundred years here, Laura. Why don't we circle back? And I was like, okay. I had somehow in the first draft jumped from the penal laws to the black and tans. And he was like, we have a few gaps to fill here. And I said, okay, Robert.
Bit of context.
So he's just a genius. And yeah,
that's amazing. That's amazing. So anyway, that's a beautiful entry point, I think, because it is as dedicated as well as to your parents, both to your brother also, which I think is beautiful. But so let's get into the book then, Laura, because that's what we're here to talk about. And just tell me first of all, because you mentioned, you know, how it was maybe everything you'd been doing online and so on that ultimately led to the book, but you also had obviously had a passion for English and writing since school, I think you've told us. But so can you tell us, how did the book come about? What inspired you to do it and how did that all happen?
So funny enough, the book came to me. I didn't understand that this is a way that publishing can work, but I thought it was author writes books for years, begs publishers to publish. The publisher came to me and they said, hey, over in the States, we're seeing the global, I guess, you know, Gaeilge appreciation movement. We think, we've seen your content. We think you could write a fabulous book for us on this. Would you like to? And I said, what? Yes. You know, like, hell yeah. It's crazy because, again, there's so much, I think, fate in this, which is just nuts. And like, my two, everyone has their big dreams for their life. They're big dreams, the ones that feel unattainable, not the ones like in the short term that like, okay, I want to achieve X, Y, Z. Like these are my big ones. And probably won't happen, but like imagine that you dream about. My two, that going back to maybe when I was like 16, 17, 18, all the way up until I kind of started working in media, my two were to be an author and to be a kids presenter. I was 22 working full time as a kids presenter. I got that email asking me to write a book. And I said, what the F? It's unfathomable. Like what?
As somebody who's a couple of generations older, I would say, girl, you're peaking quite soon.
Oh yeah. I'm like, I'm ready to retire. Get me on a cruise. I've done everything I need to. And it's kind of just the scale of a lot of it is unfathomable sometimes. And even the book, I'm still like, I see it on the shelves and I'm like, who wrote that? It was me. What? But yeah, so they emailed and said, love your content. Would love to make this into a book. You do? I said, I do. And I did. And it was the craziest couple of months. Bit of a blur, to be honest. Like we had a first draft in four or 5 months, if not less, which is crazy. Well, because I was working full time as a news anchor and reporter at the same time. So that was a crazy few months. But I suppose like with the book, it was mainly just getting information I already had onto paper. I didn't have to create this out of nothing. I see myself as more of a collector and a curator than an author. I didn't create something out of nothing. I took information that I've learned, people have shared with me, I've experienced, and I just put it onto pages. It's not my own necessarily like intellectual property. I haven't created characters or a plot or anything. I've just taken information that has been so graciously shared with me and put it on pages so that other people can gain access to it. Because I think my journey has been quite valuable and the standpoint I can have on a lot of things. And I think it's a valuable viewpoint to share. But yeah, basically the book, we wanted it to be people's, first stepping stone into the language by viewing it through the lens of history and culture and just making that connection, saying, oh, well, we say these things in English in Ireland because this comes from Irish and these traditions we have. Even just looking at the Celtic mythology of the country, the names of all these things, they're all in Irish, and you mightn't care necessarily much about the Irish language, but you might think history is really cool. And that's an access point. And it was just, I'm really, really proud of what we put together. And it was written with an international audience in mind because I knew it was going to be sold globally. But so many Irish people have said they've loved it so much and it's been so nostalgic.
You're rightfully proud, Laura, I have to say. And no, I'm not just saying that. I mean, I'm saying it because I can I confess?
Yes.
A prejudice.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And because I remember when we were initially kind of knocked across the book and I said, oh, wow, okay, this is something now from social media and it's going to be, and it's somebody who they've said, and they kind of, like they created this thing just to kind of be like,
whack a face on it and sell it.
On the brand and off we go and so on. And so I was kind of, there was a slight kind of a raised eyebrow kind of going, okay.
Yeah, fair enough though, fair enough.
And that's not knowing you at all from Adam, and I don't go on social media, you know what I mean? I was just kind of, I again, like that was the prejudice.
Of course, yeah.
I got the book and I have to say, I mean, I just wish there had been a book like this when I was returning to learn the language, because it is just fantastic. Because one of the biggest problems that I think we've spoken to others here on the show in relation to this in the past. And I think this goes back again to this whole problem that we have about Irish people and Irish is that there's so many assumptions and false assumptions made. For instance, there's an assumption that because we're Irish, we've somehow picked up certain basic kind of fundamental understanding of the basics of the language by osmosis. And that therefore we're going to be able to kind of, if you like, jump in at a certain level. But one of the things you do in the book, for instance, you start with the sounds of the language and the sounds of the letters and things like that.
And it has been huge. And the thing is, if I had written this book 4 years ago, that mightn't have been as an integral section of the book, because that's, again, something I have come to learn with my journey with the language. I felt like I was making the most progress with my Irish when the Irish I was speaking actually sounded like Irish and not English. And this is a big thing. I didn't want to write a book where it was just a list of phrases. Hello, Diagwitch, how are you? Codasathotu, because it's putting the language on a balance with English the whole time, which I didn't like. Now I know hypocritical, the book is in English, but that's so that I didn't care. I was like, I just want people to know this information, but I want it to be accessible.
Okay, and I want to just jump in there again because this is hitting so many things, and the reason we're having this conversation here on this show in English is for precisely that reason. Because when I was returning as a learner, I didn't understand the language. I couldn't access resources in the language directly, and therefore I needed to go through English. So I think that's a huge service to people. But there was there was so certain kind of, if you like, things taken for granted in relation to the sounds of the language that nobody
But
told me.
this is the thing.
Like nobody.
I'm like, why wasn't I told we go to school? Like, I started learning Spanish in secondary school, and I was told, okay, the H's aren't pronounced. Okay, you're not going around saying hola, you're saying hola.
Yeah.
The V's are B's. It's not vivo en Longford, it's vivo en Longford. The J's make a sound. No one ever taught me that about Irish. Ever, ever, ever. So it perpetuated this idea that Irish could not exist without English and vice versa. That we read Irish with the same phonetic and phonemic system that we used for English. The sounds that we were taught letters made in English, which they must make the same sounds in Irish if it's the same letters I'm looking at. And I'm like, this is such a fundamental thing. And from my education perspective as well, I'm like, what? Like actually what? I learned about the slender and broad D's and T's so late. I remember being in college and hearing everyone else going, and I was like, okay, well, I better start doing that. And literally had to physically train myself to be like, okay, anytime I know there's a CH coming up in a word, I have to make the sound, or I have to make the sound for DH and GH. Why? Why? Like, what?
But nobody sits you down and tells you that, right? I mean, I remember hearing this say quail, and lahan, for some reason that sticks in my head from. But no, nobody actually said to me, and you know what? Like, if it's an SI, it's sh, like shul, and the SU, it's stool, right? So and you go, wait a minute, the consonant changes because of the vowel that's next to it. What?
Probably one of the biggest spelling mistakes we see is shul versus sul. People writing, tá shul a gurma agam, or tá me ag sul gudzi an shoppa. If they knew that sh sound rule, then they would know which one is the right way to spell it. Like the name Saoirse is the perfect example of this that everyone freaks out about in American media. Oh my God, how does it make sense? S-A-S-I-R-S-H S-E at the end. Saoirse. You have your broad and your slender S's there. But like, I just, again, it's such, and this is what I want to do with my TikTok. I'm like, I've learned so many things that I'm actually like, how have I gone this long without knowing this? And I'm like, okay, I have had to go on this whole roundabout journey around the world in 80 days, to find out this information that seems so basic. And I'm like, I need to tell people. People need to know. I can't gatekeep this. I need to share this information. I'll tell you one that'll blow your mind. Maybe you've copped on to this already. What's the word for week in Irish?
Shafton.
What's the number 7?
Oh yeah, Shafton.
Yeah, okay. What are vegetables?
Yeah. Glossary.
What's the colour green?
A gloss, yeah.
So it's just mad. And like, just the tidbits of information I found out, and particularly with pronunciation. I'm a big, big, big advocate for correct pronunciation of Irish. And look, this can ruffle some feathers, but as I always give the example, if you're in a restaurant and there's a table behind you and you're saying, Jesus, that's a big gang of Germans there behind us. How do you know they're German? Because each language and each family of languages has its own sound, its own musicality. And that's how you identify them. Jesus, look at all the Spaniards, the Spanish people sitting behind us there. How do you know they're Spanish? Because Spanish has a sound. Irish has a sound. Okay, we might have lost it. It might have gotten hidden. It's never been lost. It's been preserved by native speakers and communities. But I'm like, okay, if I'm going to speak it, least I can do is, it's the same thing as, okay, if you meet someone, least you can do is pronounce their name properly. Do you know, least I can do is speak Irish that sounds like Irish and honour those sounds. And that's hugely important to me. Hugely, hugely.
It's so huge, and it's so cool. I mean, and that's why I think the fact that you start with that. I mean, this is a serious book for anybody who's interested in learning the language. And as I say, I can only just say, I wish it had been there when I was starting. Just before we started recording, I mentioned a book to you that I came across, Unbail Bio, by Tomás O'Malley, and that was written in the 1930s, and it is an extraordinary book. I mean, I think you're familiar with it as well. I came across it in UCC, a lecturer there, Canadaku, recommended it to me, but it's Asquale. Right now, it was written in 1936, and I think it was it was Antal Rory O'Higgins did a kind of an updated version of it that came out in 2002. It's reprinted in 2020. Highly recommended to anybody. But it's as Gaeilge. And until I got to a certain level of proficiency, just simply that book was utterly useless to me. And it goes through how you use the Bannockby, and it goes through all the different everyday kind of aspects of the language. And it's incredible, just like this kind of you can download how the language operates on a day-to-day basis. Not you learn a Schwab but off by heart. It's the real thing. I think your book is a modern day BLBO. I think it is how the language exists today. Because you mentioned this as well, when we were talking earlier about doing Irish in the Leaving Cert, and you learn your essays and you learn your Schwab and you do you get points for saying your exam number and stuff like this. And it's all it's completely artificial. And you're learning exam technique rather than language, right?
I didn't learn anything about the language. I just learned off.
You learn how to pass an exam.
And look, the thing is, it's important to learn about literature, absolutely. But when the students are thinking, I just need to get points here, they don't give a crap what the poet actually said. They learn off it. They learn off a bit about the theme. And it was only when I went back and was doing grinds in college, I was doing Leaving Cert grinds, and I reread the poems, and I was like, these are actually hilarious. Across the Interlude, I was like, this is actually a hilarious poem, but I just didn't have the bandwidth to see it in that way when I was doing my Leaving Cert. But yeah, I wanted the book to be modern. And
but here you give people because what is over is the idea of that if you meet somebody in a social context, how do you those little things that
we wanted everything to be practical. I wanted every day, even if you treated it as like a coffee table book, that every day you pick one page, and whatever's on that page, you will more than likely be able to find a way to use that today. Because that was one of the core concepts I started with on my TikTok. It was like, well, stop saying hello, say diolch, or stop saying goodbye, slán. We all know these things. All of us using these phrases is magically going to save the future of the language, but it's honouring the language every day. And it's using a little bit of it. And in using those phrases, you might discover a hidden Gaeilgeoir, as I call them, or a Gaeilgeoir, an Irish speaker out in the wild. The amount of times I've said slán to somebody and then they say slán back, and we kind of give each other the look like, you speak Irish too? And yeah, it's just I wanted every phrase in the book. I think I wanted to help people avoid those moments where you're trying to make conversation with someone and you're like, I don't know what to say now. I just wanted everything to be practical and actually useful, but then also give a little bit of context about it, a little bit of history, some examples of how to use it. I just wanted it to be kind of like a little handbook, like a guidebook, like your little Bible. Okay, this is going to carry you through the onset of your journey with the language.
This is so going to get you there, and it is just. And first of all, it's a really fascinating book to read. And if you don't, depending on where you are in terms of the language journey, you can really pick this up and just get interest and entertainment and complete kind of, if you like, just access to the language. And it isn't just kind of like, okay, it's running through. Okay, let's do the verbs here now, and let's do whatever. It's everything is very, very, very practical. What I also love about it is how, and this is going to be sound maybe kind of weird, but for instance, I was going through the table of contents, and I was looking, because you have all the different words for different contexts and blessings and curses, rituals and traditions, fun and entertainment, etc., right? And I was kind of going down through it, and you see some of the kind of the seanchal that you'd be familiar with, and expressions and kind of nana kainta that are very familiar. And then I saw Erscamal and and I said, wait a minute, that's Clubland. That's not really.
Yeah.
And then I went and read it, and I said, oh, it is, because of course, but that's the way the Irish language works today, is that we have our English language kind of, hybridization,
Hiberno English.
Happened in relation.
Hiberno English is one of my biggest fascinations. And look, with a lot of phrases that we use in Ireland, it's hard to know, well, did the English come first and then it got adapted into Irish, or did the Irish come first and then it got adapted into English? A lot of the times, I don't know. But there's so many examples of Hiberno English, and I think that's a really good starting point for people to just become aware of the fact that, okay, the Irish we speak in Ireland is directly impacted by the presence of Irish in the country. So all these people that try to rebuke the language and say, nah, it's dead, I want nothing to do with it. Too bad. It's everywhere. It's in our names. It's in our place names. It's in our phrases. It's in the way we speak English. You can't get away from it. It's in your life. So you can either put up with it or not, but it's here, and it's here to stay. Favourite example of this is giving out. I got an awful given out to. Other English speakers don't say that. If you were to say that to an American or a British, they'd be like, what? Giving out? Like, is it like, he got told off, or he got scolded? But there's so many examples of it. So like things like Erscamalani, in terms of the etymology where it comes from, it can be hard. It's like, well, was this in English first and then do we bring it into Irish or vice versa? But just that we can be flexible with the two. And
Oh, completely. But what I love about that as an example now, and I just chose it kind of pretty much at random, but it's the modern use of the language as it is spoken today. And that's why I compare it to Ambelio, because I think that like you've taken the real language from the wild, if you like, rather than just something out of a leaving certificate textbook or a kind of a Kaidan Ifigul, that this is the real language, I say, in the wild, as it is used by ordinary speakers of the language as it exists today.
that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to just, I was like, what do I actually say every day? Do you know, like, what are the little phrases I use? Or if I heard a nice little phrase from someone, do you know, all my friends and co-workers, they didn't know it, but for the past year, I was jotting down any little nice phrase that they used and putting it into the book. So a lot of them are very practical, but then I also just wanted a lot of Shanachals to be there because there's a lot grammatically you can learn about the language from Shanachal, but they were classic and they were classic for a reason. And, do you know, I think a lot of the times there's just a nice sentiment to be got from them. As I mentioned in the book, like it's a nice little phrase that you could put as your phone wallpaper, just little reminders, and I find a lot of comfort in them. I find a lot of comfort in the Irish language in general, and I think this is a reason we see so many people returning to it. People want to return to something that feels natural and organic and homey and familiar and authentic, I guess. And that's what she feels like for me. She's beautiful and she's warm and cozy, and it's just a presence that it is a presence in my life. It's not just that I speak it and that's that. That feels very robotic, but it is a presence in my life and it's everywhere. And she's everywhere, and that's something I always tell learners. Whenever I speak about the Irish language in English, I always call her and she, because it's a feminine noun in Irish. We don't have gendered nouns in English, but I think it's a nice way when speaking English to pay homage to her.
I want to just but I want to take that, and this is, anyone who listens to this regularly this is a particular kind of hobby horse of mine. I think I was possibly 50 by the time I was learned for the first time that there are feminine and masculine.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I didn't learn it till I was in Leaf and Search. There's one question on the reading comprehensions where all of a sudden it's like, after 14 years, hey, now I need to know the gender. And I was like, what? That was just my skill. You know, I've worked with, especially at my master's, some amazing teachers who I know.
went through the entire secondary education without ever encountering
I hadn't a Scooby. I had not a Scooby. And all of a sudden it was like, well, I have to try and figure this out now.
Yeah.
You know, but it's crazy. But that's one of my favourite facts. And Ireland as a country is feminine. She's a matriarchy after and goddess Edu. And yeah, it's a nice way of speaking English, I think, to pay homage to Irish.
And the rivers are all feminine, and it's are most
words associated with nature are feminine, because that would be seen as something that came directly from Edu, from the mother of the country, essentially, Mother Nature, for lack of a better word. So most Unchrian, the sky, Onarige, the sea, Onchialach, the moon, they're all feminine nouns, which I love it.
That is so cool. That is so cool. Bonus information.
Yeah,
here,
but another funny one though, most nouns associated with housework are also feminine. So like school, chruaga, that's feminine. But hey, we'll take the nature. That one's cool. No matter.
Yeah. Let's not overthink this. Okay, now as we're on this, and I mean, again, the book is Irish History and Culture Through Language by Laura Pakenham, who it is my absolute pleasure to speak today. It's published by Simon and Schuster. And we'll have all the details of it in the show notes and so on. But and it is one that I highly, highly recommend to anybody, no matter what stage you're at in your kind of Irish language journey. I think you are going to find it. I know you are going to find it extremely valuable, useful, and also an enjoyable read. But so the book is, and again, I see you've been a TV presenter, tick, dream fulfillment. You've written a book, dream.
Yeah.
I'm just going like, oh,
I'm retired. I am retiring and going on a cruise.
You just go back to bed. It's all done. But so that's incredible in terms of the journey and what you're doing for the language is extraordinary. But you mentioned and you touched on it there. What's your sense for? I'd love to get your take on this now in terms of the language today, and the future of the language, because I know that it's something that it's a lot of people are very, very deeply concerned about this. And I suppose more than the future of the language, possibly the future of the Gaeltacht is something that people are extraordinarily concerned about. I think people's ability to actually live in the Gaeltacht and get houses to live in the Gaeltacht is a massive, massive thing in terms of people being able to live together as communities with different generations who are living and growing up together the way that their families have done for generations before them. What's your sense of all that? What's your kind of your how do you what's your sense of the future of the language?
It's hard to be always optimistic. Yeah, look, I always say, do I foresee an Ireland where Irish is the predominantly spoken language? No. The damage is done. I don't think it can be salvaged back to its former glory. Pessimistic view, but I think also realistic. So I think for the majority of the population, if we can get to a point where Irish plays a role in just social life, I think the GAA should be a fully Irish language operational organisation. That youngsters are going, they're doing their training, they're being trained by trainers who speak Irish, they're speaking Irish through matches. I think that's a great point of contact. Also, any branches of cultus for traditional Irish music, I think they should be fully operational through Irish, the likes of score, community games, and FLA, everything should be done in Irish. Your adjudicator should be calling you up in Irish, because I think there are points of contact. GAA, music, tradition, dance, song, culture.
And that's fascinating. It's a really interesting take, and one that and that's a perspective I have. That's a very practical thing that makes a lot of sense. But how would you push? People say, "Well, look, I don't speak Irish, and I want to contribute as a volunteer for my local GAA club and coach kids and so on." And I don't want to be excluded because I don't speak Irish. And again, I'm just being devil's advocate here in relation to that. How do you? Because I think that would really be an excellent baby step that we could take in terms of progressing things, particularly with kids.
Look, it would never be about exclusion, but it's an opportunity. And look at the schools in Ireland. You have children coming here from other countries who haven't even grasped English yet, and they're in Gael schools and they're in Irish medium schools. And that's not me saying it's easy for them, but immersion is key. And I think just once there's a general willingness, all it has to be is a willingness. Again, potentially one of my hot takes, like, I'm not going to move to Spain and be annoyed if the shopkeeper doesn't speak English to me. I'm in Spain, which is potentially a bit of a hot take, but not in any of an uninclusive sense at all. But some of the people I have found and had the most positive experience in terms of the Irish language with are multinationals who want to learn about the language and who find it so interesting. And because a lot of them grow up in multilingual contexts as well, they already have maybe their mother language at home. And I think it's an opportunity, and I think it's something beautiful. And of course it's easy for me to say that, but also I felt like the person on the outside when it came to Irish. I felt excluded. I felt like an alien, and I just kept with it. And a lot of it happened passively. It's not as if there'd be guards at the gate, sorry, show me your phone, and no inclusion in otherwise. But just that it would be the language of communication more than, any other, like Gael schools anywhere, any Irish language scene, there are people who are needed for it, who maybe don't have the complete proficiency of Irish. But like, take my boyfriend, for example. He's not at the point yet where he can speak Irish, but he understands everything that's happening. So if that's the language of the use language, I suppose, the target language that's being used, it will become more natural. And I just think it would be, I just think it would be beautiful. And Irish people, it's not in our nature to exclude anybody, for the most part, and especially not something like team sport or music. There's not much room for exclusion there. Once you're there for the sport, great. The Gaeilge is the bonus. That's just how we do it. They're just the tools we use to complete this goal. Once you're there for the Ceol, great. The Gaeilge is just the tool we use to do it. And
That would be a very, very clever way, actually. You mentioned, I think, Teanga Imanach, you know what I mean? If we made the Teanga Imanach of these particular contexts, Irish and or Ceoltas would be obvious ones because of their traditional Irish activity, sports or music. Yeah. No, that is. Tell me, what about also your sense of it today? The language. I mean, I know that you see a lot of references, and I'm kind of using air quotes here in terms of Gaeilge having a moment, and I think a lot of people who've lived and strived on behalf of the language feel like it's a bit condescending. But certainly I feel a sea change in relation to the language. I think the Catherine Connolly's campaign for the presidency, it was extraordinary. I didn't see it coming, I have to say, because I was the time saying, okay, I said, oh, look, the language into political position. but it certainly did seem to be the kind of the point of difference, and for people, and the language has had a very, it's really, there's been a spotlight shone on the language, I think, since Catherine Connolly's election. And I do get the sense now more and more of seeing the language present in life around the place. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Again, yeah, I suppose in the beginning, like when I started posting on TikTok, it was kind of within that time frame and over the next 2 years and up until now that it was really this, oh, Gaelic is having its moment. That coincided with Colin Kuhn, that coincided with, the kneecap effect. And Gaelic is having its moment, Gaelic revival. And I didn't see anything wrong with that terminology in the beginning. I was like, yeah, Gaelic is having a moment, And I suppose that was easy for me to say. It was like, okay, I just got here and I'm just in on this now. But then you have to take into consideration the people who have been literally working tirelessly and slogging for this for years. And then all of a sudden then it's like, oh, well, suddenly Gaelic is having a revival. It's like, what do you mean? We've been working at this for years and years. So I understand the frustration. And then I could also understand the frustration from the Gaeltacht communities where they're like, okay, I'm glad you have your movies and your TikToks, but like, we can't afford to live here and we can't build a house here. So I can understand that's frustrating. And again, the commercialization of the language where they're like, this is just our normal life. This is just our livelihood. I suppose the way and the terminology I've become comfortable with using is a mindset shift, because I think we're at a time where the vast majority aren't opposed to the language. That's how it certainly felt for me when I had started in college. And I'd be telling people what I was studying and they'd be like, Jesus, would you not be better off doing a modern language or something? Like, aren't you leaving yourself awful restricted with Irish? Would you not be better choosing a modern language or German or Mandarin? Whereas now I tell people what I do and they see what I do and it's, oh God, that's so cool. I wish I could speak it. I don't remember anyone telling me at the time when I started pursuing Irish third level. I don't remember anyone saying to me, oh God, I wish I could still speak it, or I wish I had learned it differently in school. Now that's all I hear. People tell me it's so cool. And I think it's because I suppose Gaeilge has more of a social status now. She's very intertwined with culture, music, fashion, heritage, history. And I think we've always been very patriotic people, but we're finding palpable, tebi, I can't think of the word in Irish, but like tactile ways to outwardly portray our patriotism, our music. Fontaine's DC, Kneecap, Madra Salach, what we're consuming. Okay, we're reading in Irish, we're watching shows in Irish, we're listening to Irish. It's a touching point, it's an access point to the language. What we're wearing, we see Claddagh on everything. I see people give out about the Claddagh stuff. I love it. Again, it's just an expression of your patriotism and your culture. I think Claddaghs are beautiful, do you know? So I don't understand that sometimes. I don't know, sometimes some stuff I see online is like, well, this is good, this isn't doing any harm. I don't know, maybe these people do think it's doing harm in some sense, that it's commercializing the language or the identity when there's so much work still to be done. But I think in the meantime, it's good. When I like it, and if someone wants to wear a little Claddagh ring or, I think it's beautiful. And there's nothing wrong with it, in my opinion. But again, I think and the Irish language as well, it's a tactile, palpable expression of self-identity and patriotism and pride. We've always been a proud people. That's never changed. But we just have more visible ways to express it. And of course, the Irish language, there's a lot more to that than a Claddagh jumper. But it's kind of in the same realm. It's an expression. It's so much more for the people who are fully dedicated to it and use it.
Is Tebi abstract?
Tebi. I thought Tebi, or could be. I thought Tebi was like...
Okay.
Tebi. Oh, I could be wrong.
That you could feel it.
Yeah.
Right? No, but the point that you're making is really resonating with me insofar as, in terms of the expression of our patriotism often and our pride of being Irish and of Irish culture and so on, is done despite the fact for many of us, we can't actually interact with that culture directly in the language in which that culture has been transmitted for thousands of years. And so I think, the Irish, I think, is a beautiful manifestation or expression of that, or in a way to actually engage in it directly and be part of it. It's a beautiful image, Laura. Thank you for sharing with us. Laura, as we come to the end of our time together, as we were just kind of getting to the kind of end of our of the show, I have a question that I ask each of the guests, and it's each of our guests, and I'd like to ask you, what's your Irish language why? Why do you do all that you do in relation to the language? And I'm framing the question particularly in the context of you're someone who has, as by your own kind of description, it wasn't a part of your life growing up. It wasn't something that you were heavily influenced by anybody in relation to it. You kind of happened upon it. The degree you chose to do was almost like kind of a misunderstanding.
Oh, completely. My fate was decided for me. I had no role in it. It said, well, you're an Irish speaker now. I said, okay.
Yeah. And now you have, and the story you have to tell in relation to that was just such an inspirational one. It's just such a joyous one. It's so, and what you're doing and continue to do in terms of writing this book and everything that you're doing online and in your media work in relation to language is absolutely fantastic. But it's a big commitment and it's a lot of hard work that you are engaging in constantly. So why do you do all that? What inspires you in relation to the language?
I don't know what else I'd do. I really don't know who I'd be without it. I don't know who my friends would be. I don't know what I'd be doing for work. I don't know what my purpose would be, my passions, my hobbies. It was kind of like the last piece in the puzzle. I think it just solidified a lot of things for me and gave me purpose. And I think I do have an important purpose in sharing my little story. Yeah, but also why wouldn't I? Like it's such a beautiful language and it's helped me understand so much about my place in the world and my place in this country. And I just think it's a beautiful space or realm to live in. I always think of Manchán, and he talked so much about different realms kind of living and existing within each other in Ireland. And I think once you tap into the language, a lot of that is opened for you. And it just feels like a very unique, sacred, solemn space, i.e. the Irish language, to me. I'm sure to a lot of people it's a thing of nothing and they're like, sure, this is just what I speak. But it's just very special to me. And I feel as if it chose me. My story, I think there's a lot of fate in that. There's a lot of oopsies and accidents and how did I end up here? And I think she chose me and I'm going to honour her and keep going. And she'll always be a part of my life. And yeah, I suppose she's my first love. Sorry to my boyfriend, she's my first love.
Wonderful. What a beautiful way to end. And thank you for everything that you shared
thank
with
you.
us here, Laura. Laura, a chora buenas ansoltas and scéal Ryan Tulin. Gurv Mila Mahagut, Fuishin Berbua, August Bannock.
Gur Mila Mahatain, Slán Leib.
Thanks for listening. Gurv Mila Mahagut Asave Eishtut. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I would really appreciate your feedback and would be eternally grateful if you would follow, rate and review the show. Please also be sure to sign up at thelanguagequestion.com/resources to get your free valuable learning resources and to stay up to date with upcoming episodes, guests and to receive exclusive content. Slán Tom.